Hi, all, and welcome to episode 34 of Plain Speaking Sanjiv. Today, I'm going to speak about pricing, specifically about the pros and cons of having price caps and minimum fares, and why it may make sense in some situations and not so much in other situations. First of all, in the current environment, the COVID crisis, with the airlines restarting, I think it makes sense to have some kind of checks on the fares, both at the low end and the high end. I can understand where the government is coming from, and I fully appreciate it. They're putting a price floor or a minimum price just to protect against the situation where if demand isn't very much, you don't have predatory pricing, which is a stronger player drops fares dramatically and then hurts the weaker players because that will just create more pain for the industry. So the price floor is put to ensure there is no predatory pricing, and it is not a permanent thing; it's a temporary thing. A price cap is put for the opposite reason, which is that if there's too much demand, it should not be that customers who are now finally able to go home or go on their emergency trip have to pay unreasonable amounts of, for the airfare. And so again, very, very rational, logical reasons why in a situation like this, you may want to have a temporary price floor and price cap. But in normal situations or on an ongoing basis, having a price floor or a price cap actually hurts consumers and hurts airlines as well. What a price floor does in normal situations is that it actually reduces revenue for the airlines, results in the airlines flying lots of empty seats on off peak flights or during off seasons, and raises the average fare for consumers because those fare sales, which are used to fill those empty seats, can no longer happen because there's a minimum fare that has to be charged. What happens in this situation is because demand gets reduced, since you don't have the ability to stimulate demand using by dropping fares, it is the weakest players or the least attractive players that get hurt the most. Because if everybody is forced to price at a certain minimum and not drop below that, and the two players who are offering a flight from A to B, obviously the one customer who's now left, earlier there might have been two customers, one going to each airline, but if there's one customer left, he or she would choose the better airline, or the airline that is perceived as being more reliable, better service, etc. So it is the weaker airlines that get hurt when you put a price floor. A price cap, on the other hand, also creates problems, because what it does is it essentially doesn't allow the market to determine the optimal level of fare to balance supply and demand. So when you put a price cap and there's a lot of demand, sellout situations happen where basically you have a shortage of seats. So if you put a price cap in high season, where passengers are willing to pay much more because it's high season and this is the demand is less flexible, and you put a price cap, what will happen is that the fares will sell out maybe weeks in advance, so that when you decide to plan your trip during the Diwali or Christmas season, etc., or summer holidays, you may find that you are now planning a month in advance, but there's no seats because there was a price cap and everything got sold out because the airlines did not have the ability to inventory manage and say, okay, we are going to block certain seats at higher fare buckets for those who book later. The revenue management systems actually optimize pricing and the inventory allocation so that ideally the last seat goes at the last minute to the last passenger. And the price at which that seat goes depends on what the demand and supply balance was. So again, when you put a price cap, you go back to the old bad days of socialism, where if you wanted to buy an appliance or a scooter, you had to wait months or in some cases years because there was a shortage. So to sum up, a price floor will increase average fares and reduce demand, which hurts everybody, and a price cap will create situations of shortage, which again hurts consumers as well as airlines. So that is why world over airlines do free pricing. That is why even in India the government has deregulated pricing, and that is why the measures that were announced yesterday are only temporary, because they are for a special situation, and they certainly would not make sense. It would be suboptimal and would hurt consumers and airlines if they were done on an ongoing basis. So those of us who think that this is the best way to do it, we need to understand how pricing works and what it means, because be careful of what you wish for, because the days of good fares will go away and the days of shortages may be back if this were to become the norm. So thanks again, hope that made sense, and see you tomorrow. Take care.